How about you give us as an introduction? What are we doing?
Okay. All right. So for a little context here, I'm Mike Bryan and this is Andrew Sheasley. We are Insight Arizona podcast. And today we're going to be looking at a meeting of the Pima County Board of Supervisors as they're discussing policy adoption to basically ban ICE and CPP from using county-owned property for staging and operations. Now, there's a lot of debate as to how effective that sort of thing is going to be. What are we're going to actually cite these officers for trespassing, or are we going to actually, is it actually going to be effective? Is one question. But certainly, it is a symbolic gesture at the very least that ICE is not welcome in Pima County, and I'm sure that it'll piss off all the right people. So we're going to have a little view of some of what the public is saying about it, some pro and con there. And when they vote on this matter, and it does pass, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 5-1, with of course, the Republican being in opposition, and he will have some interesting and perhaps entertaining things to say about why he voted no. And me and Andrew will have some fun with it.
Indeed, but 4-1. There's only 5 members.
Oh, sorry, yeah, 4-1, yeah.
Come on up to the right on up to the
I recognize everybody in that line.
Adjust the mic so that it.
Oh, nice.
Madam Chair and Board of Supervisors, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Kristen Downing. I have lived in Marana Community, specifically District 1, for almost 21 years. I'm also one of the organizers with Pima Resist ICE, or PRICE. First and foremost, I want to thank you today for considering the resolution and for spending time on this important conversation. PRICE has a petition we put out that has over 1,400 signatures against the detention center, so clearly it's an issue that the community wants to talk about. Last fall, when I first heard about the potential ICE detention center, I could not stop thinking about all the people around me. As I went about my daily errands, I looked around and I wondered.
Could you pause here for a second, Andrew?
Thriving businesses.
So you've already watched this at least to some depth. Does anything come up on the board about some kind of symbolic resolution to oppose any ICE detention facility here in Pima County? Does that arise?
Yes, I believe there's 3 different agenda items that they all take a vote on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And, I would just point out to people that, even if we pass this, we really don't have a strong, legal lever to prevent anybody from selling their land or their facilities to ICE to set up a detention center. Basically, all the Democrats can do on the Pima County Board of Supervisors is just say, we don't approve of that shit. But to do anything effective to stop it is problematic and likely not to be successful.
I mean, the question is then, political-wise, is it worth it to spend a bunch of taxpayer dollars on any sort of lawsuit that's probably going to fail?
I don't know that anything in like a sense of the Pima County kind of thing of condemnation of the idea of a facility or anything is going to come to litigation. Because I don't think there's any tools that they can really use to prevent a private party from, selling their land or selling their facility to ICE for any particular purpose. So I don't think there's any legal efficacy to it. It's, symbolic.
Right. But I'm saying, is there anything Pima could do, even if it would fail, to tie things up in court to delay the usage of land at the very least?
Potentially. I mean, yeah, I suppose that's possible. But further on down the line, once a facility has been identified and is being converted for use, there might be things that they can do to sticky up the wicket. But yeah, I don't know. That eventuality hasn't really come to pass. It's more theoretical at this point.
Right. But people are looking for more than just condemnation.
Yeah. I mean, there actually is a facility that's been purchased by Homeland Security in Surprise, Arizona.
Correct.
But yeah, I don't know anything around here that is yet been identified as either potentially selling or having been sold to Homeland Security.
All right, let's continue.
Would turn into. Would our streets be filled with buses full of our kidnapped neighbors and friends going past? Would people feel safe leaving their homes to go to the dog park or to church? Would the cashier at the grocery store feel safe to come into work? Our community would no longer thrive and our daily lives would be irreparably damaged because the fact is, when an ICE detention center opens, ICE's presence within that community increases exponentially. And with that, the violence and racist practices they employ would become rampant throughout our community.
100%.
An ICE detention center would also be catastrophic for our economy. Housing values would decrease, retail sales would go down, and restaurants and hotels would also suffer because Marana would become the next prison town, much like Florence and Eloy, and people would not be rushing to come and see all that our community has to offer. We must protect our community and all of Southern Arizona by doing all we can to stop the detention center from opening. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I like saying that. Vice Chair Hines, Supervisors Christie, Cano, and Scott. Thank you for allowing me to be here again. My name is Roland Baker. I'm back. So I want to talk to you about 21, 22, and 23. For 21, that's the ordinance to protect Pima County property for all of our siblings to be safe from abduction and kidnapping. We do not live in North Korea, although if I were to close my eyes, it seems this way. I'm a part of rapid response, and I've seen personally what ICE and Border Patrol have done to the people of this town and this county. Shame on us. Vote yes on this ordinance. As far as 22, only illegal people wear masks and refuse to show who they are and not show their badges, nor say what law enforcement they are with. I urge you to vote yes on banning the use of masks and all law enforcement officers to wear their IDs. That's the least that they can do. And then for 23, as a member of Price, Pima Resist ICE, I urge you and implore you to please vote on this resolution. It will help us significantly as we have been talking to the Marana Town Council for quite a long time to not allow the detention center to be open. We cannot have that in our county. We cannot have that in the city of Marana. As my esteemed friend here, Kristen, just spoke of, those are the very reasons. And as a member of Rapid Response, I have seen what happens to our people who live here in the city of Tucson. I have seen them being torn out of their homes, torn out of their cars, the windows being broken, doors being broken down. We cannot have that kind of hate happening here in the county or here in Marana. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
You pause there for a sec. So it seems Roland is more aware of something than I was, which is I guess I did vaguely hear about the possibility of a facility being obtained and acquired by Homeland Security in Marana. I don't know if there's a particular facility that we're concerned about there, but I imagine, Roland probably knows more about this than I, because she's like right there on the front lines every day. But as to the ICE and CPP wearing face coverings and not identifying themselves, that's going to be a stretch. I mean, I don't know that any ordinance at the county level is actually going to be effective in combating that. It's worth doing just to give it a good try. But I'll tell you, people really misunderstand why ICE and CPP are doing that and how they're doing it. And it's important to contextualize. Number one, the Homeland Security in general has been designated now under federal law as a security agency. So same kind of level as the CIA as to the identity of their personnel. And so that's why it's so hard to identify these people, because there's no public list available of who these guys are. And that's by design. And they're protecting that information from the press and from FOIA requests and so forth with this security level that they've given to that personnel list.
Because of 3%ers and Proud Boys.
Exactly right. Yeah, because if people were able to identify these guys, they would see that they are all the fucking fail sons from fucking Proud Boys and 3% and militias and yada yada. And every cop who's ever been, washed out of a service because he was just a bad cop. He had all kinds of disciplinary problems, citizen complaints about unauthorized or unjustifiable use of force. And, these guys, they fail and they fail and they fail until they're finally just like, policing a fly speck somewhere. And the prospect of a $50,000 bonus and a regular paycheck for doing what they in their hearts love to do, which is to beat people up, is really, really powerful. So if these people were identified and identifiable, it's not that they are worried about being doxxed by, well, I guess it is technically being doxxed, being, identified and their background being made public. But, they're where they're residing or, whatnot. They don't have a security concern. Police don't get attacked that way. And that's not the MO of the opposition. What we would do is we would publish information about how fucking dirty these people are, how fucking slimy they are, and how much they've they've done in their careers thus far to justify not being fucking Leos anymore, and to be inducted into this, Trump's militia failson team is, really the only option they have. And that would crater the viability of this whole expansion of ICE. Because if all those officers were shown to be just, bad actors and people with, criminal histories or disciplinary histories as Leos, that would just like crater public support for this whole thing. Once that mask is lifted, game over. People would not put up with it. And that's the reason why these guys are masked and unidentified, and why they've gone to such extraordinary lengths to protect that information is not because of security concerns. It's because of reputational concerns, period.
Right. But then the question is, how do we get the mask unveiled? How do the Democrats do that?
Yeah,
how does Pima County do that?
Yeah, well, Pima County's not going to be able to do it, but Congress can do it by saying, you don't get any funding if you don't, cut this out. That's one thing that we should be standing strong on, because that is their most vulnerable point. That is the Achilles heel of this national militia that Trump is standing up, is that they're all a bunch of dirty bastards.
Well, until the mask is unveiled, it is worth noting that it is a conspiracy theory, a likely one, but just a conspiracy theory.
No, it's not a conspiracy theory at all. It's in the Federal Register of administrative law, administrative rules. This whole maneuver that they did around Homeland Security to make this information unattainable. That's
right, but we don't know. We don't actually know for certain that they are 3%ers, that they are Proud Boys.
No, because they've prevented us from discovering that, because that's what they're most afraid of. Yeah,
right.
So to the extent that it hasn't been confirmed that a whole bunch of 3%ers or a whole bunch of militia members or even Proud Boys are in there, we know this is the fact. This is where they're pulling their personnel from. Is fail-sons and dipshits and militia types. Yeah.
Right. You're right, but we can't say that for certain until something's done to pull off the mask, and it's questionable if that's going to happen.
Yeah, to that extent, yes, it's a conspiracy theory, I suppose, but it's a theory with a lot of basis. And this administration does do conspiracy, so we know that.
Okay, so I'm here to speak on agenda numbers 21, 22, and 23. To begin, I would like to make note that I have stated my name for public record, and I stand here unmasked because I take pride in what I am doing. Choosing to make ICE agents carry out their operations unmasked and with clear identification, as I am now, would hold them accountable to that same standard. We are being told by our current president that these ICE agents are being deployed here to protect us, but it has been proven on a nationwide scale that they do not respect or uphold the law, and they are a violent threat to all of the communities they are present in. And I stress that that is not my personal opinion. We have all seen the footage of the violence with our own eyes. I both thank and applaud you for opposing the Marana Detainment Center. The actions we have seen from ICE agents when they are knowingly being filmed in public can lead us all to visualize how they could be treating both children and adults when they are not. Choosing to ban ICE from enforcing their agenda on county property would be another monumental step towards the protection of our families, children, co-workers, neighbors, and friends. ICE has shown countless times why they do not deserve power or access to their fellow man. I am asking you as our representatives to ask yourselves, why should ICE agents be able to continue their acts of brutality from behind a mask? Why do they deserve the right to have such unlimited access to our community, putting your families, children, co-workers, neighbors, and friends at risk when they have shown they do not respect the law or the overall right of human beings? Decisions being made to limit ICE are starting to create an inspirational ripple effect across the nation, and I'm putting my faith in you to continue taking pride in our country and to be among the ones who loved it enough to truly protect the people and restore faith in the government's ability to do so. Thank you.
I love that she's wearing that red, white, blue bandana.
Yeah,
the Dems really do need to take back the flag. Absolutely. And be more patriotic, because what's going on in the right is just completely unpatriotic in every essence.
Totally agree. What do they say? The last refuge of the scoundrel is patriotism, something like that. Yeah, it tends to be true. You don't wear that sort of thing on your sleeve unless you're trying to, be more holier than thou than others. American Democrats are more patriotic than Republicans would ever hope to be.
All right,
especially under the current circumstances. It might not have been true in the past, but it's certainly true now.
Skip ahead a
Queuing it
little
up
bit.
yeah. Cue it up to the juicy bits for us, buddy.
Here we go.
Was not enforced, and this precipitates today's problem.
5,000 last Friday.
Start
Sharing
here.
on mainstream media. There's drone footage available. These camps. We don't want to be a prison town. We want to be a university town, a tourist destination, food, culture, family. Detractors say they want to keep us safe. This is chaos, upset, illegal arrests, deaths of people who aren't in the headlines, the aggressive overreach of this administration. The issue is the Marana facility. Here is a rap sheet of the behavior of MCC, the owners of the facility, and I have one for each of you. Take a stand against this ICE. The old ICE wasn't perfect, God knows, but this ICE, not all, untrained, hopped up, masked Proud Boy goons. We don't want any of this ICE near us. Thank you.
Excellent.
It's a popular conspiracy theory.
I think she identified an operator there, a detention center operator, MTC.
Smith and Vivek.
My name is Romola Moore. I'm a resident of Pima County in Tucson in District 5. I echo what other speakers have said more eloquently than I could about what's on your agenda 21, 22, and 23. I'm here to ask you to do whatever you can to protect all of our citizens and keep ICE out of our county. We can see what's happening around the country, and it's terrible. And so I just wanted to stand up and say that. Also on your the second part, not the agenda, but the
Addendum.
say it again. Addendum. Thank you. I wholly support the banning the use of NDAs for anything, because the secrecy of keeping any kind of deal. Same thing with this detention center in Marana. That's a financial deal.
So what she's talking about is the NDAs that the Pima County did with Beale, and that was on the addendum to vote on, was to prevent NDAs between the county and businesses.
For the data center. Yeah. The facility they're talking about, and this kind of skated on by radar a bit. Last year it was sold from MTC, which is a private prison company, for $15 million. A 500-bed Arizona State prison in Marana was sold from there to potentially be under contract to ICE. And so MTC is looking to run it for ICE. Let's see. And this happened in like August of last year. The sale of the prison, closed since 2023, comes at a time when the Trump administration is expanding immigration, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so there's some concern that MTC could turn around and hawk it to ICE. And for all I know, there might be, actual active, meetings between MTC and ICE for the purpose of, turning that facility to that purpose. So that's the concern, is that immediate deal, and of course, anything that might happen in the future. So, score one for them. They were more informed than me.
Project Blue. Thank you.
Yeah, these people who have come up to speak, they have been amazing and are very just brave to come up here and tell the board.
Yeah, several of them I worked with in the past. Yeah, good people.
Dave Smith.
Well, not a very balanced audience for this, so I'm going to stand up and say, for 4 years, we had an open border. The sovereignty of the United States was not enforced, but this precipitates today's problem. We talk about Obama was the, 3.5 million people he took out of this nation. Now, the problem we have is this. We have tens of thousands of people who are in this country, maybe millions. We're not even sure. 2 million gotaways. We have no idea who they are. Now, you demand that we do due process. But then you have, where are you going to put the people going through the due process? This whole thing is an infantile masturbatory act in an attempt to make you feel good without changing the reality. We have a constitution. The American public, democracy.
Do we though?
Well, the McLaughlin poll came out this morning, shows 57% of all Americans want illegal aliens removed. 67% want
criminal
aliens removed.
Criminal illegal aliens. Misquote.
We have a constitution. We have a federal government. They usurp certainly any county control, but it's not a usurpation because it's the legitimate legal act. And that's what's happening here. You're doing the usurpation. Supervisor Allen, I saw you on the news the other night. I was on that same show. Then you talk about who's afraid. My neighborhood is afraid that you're going to undermine this nation even more. They're not concerned about what Customs and Border Patrol is doing. We want to take the mask off these people so you can have access to hurt them. That's what I see. Now, I'm going to say this, too. The one thing this board has been able to make me do is sure miss Sharon Bronson right there, I'll tell you what. So, folks, protect the community. It's got to be no strangers over citizens. It's got to stop.
That's time.
His whole line about due process, like where do you put the people in due process? going through due process. It's like you can't get rid of due process just because it's inconvenient. That's the whole point of due process, is that it's inconvenient.
Yeah, no, and it's a canard to begin with. I mean, the idea that they're giving due process to people that they're locking up in these facilities when they're not even granting them Eighth Amendment rights to be housed in humane conditions. I mean, I've seen so many instances around the country of ICE holding people in detention in, like, ICE field offices and, shitty office warehouses and stuff like that.
And it seems we have lost the mic for a bit, but it also, just continuing on his line, like, we're losing out on the Fourth Amendment in terms of the warrants. ICE is using administrative warrants instead of
exactly.
Judicial
the
warrants.
That this guy has is sadly a result of brainwashing, not actual thinking.
Yeah, it's sad. Let's also skip ahead. As he said, it's a very unbalanced audience. Everybody who had been speaking before him was against ICE on this and supporting the board. But let's actually move ahead to the voting.
Okay.
This is still called a public. Yep, still called a public. Oh, it's after the little break.
And then move it forward for discussion. As speakers have said today very clearly, and as we have seen on the streets of our community, both in terms of people standing up through protest and through monitoring and documenting activities of immigration enforcement agents, we need to, well, maybe to zoom out just a tad bit. We all, I think all of us on the board, work really hard to protect the people around us, be it our families, people in healthcare, students, neighbors, employees, right? And what we have been witnessing is such an assault on people's safety and people's dignity that I think, like other folks in our community, I have been struggling to figure out what it is that we can do to stand up, because we have to stand up. I have, in the last 2 months, had close family friends who have been detained and are sitting in Florence, one of whom was denied what ICE says that within 24 hours everybody sees a doctor. This was not true for 7 days, and he was denied access to necessary heart medication. This is not...
This is the sort of shit I was referring to about Eighth
Right
Amendment
now, our community
violations.
is struggling whether to go to school, whether to go to church, to go get medical care. These are things that I think are the antithesis, right? Of what it is that we as a body seeks to create within our community. We need people to feel safe. And so in thinking about county property, we have libraries, we have health clinics, we have things like parking garages and other open spaces and conservation lands. Places of the county should be places that are safe for people to escape from, find some ounce of respite against the terror that we are seeing out on our streets and in streets across this country. So this is an effort for the county to look to and give direction to the county administrator, Pima County Attorney's Office, to develop an ordinance that will be returned to us at our next meeting on the February 17th, because of the urgency of the moment, that can lay out how our property can be safe from federal immigration enforcement. So with that, I would like to
pause here if you would. So a couple of things. This is Jen Allen. She's the current chair of the Pima County Board of Supervisors, and she's a badass. This is her first term. People are looking to her for leadership on this issue because, she may be a first termer, but she is an experienced operator. I mean, she's led several nonprofits here in Arizona and elsewhere. And so, yeah, she's a very articulate warrior for social justice. And one of the things she's pointing out here is that this is a referral to draft an ordinance. This isn't an ordinance that is like baked in right now. They're asking the county attorney to draft something to try and make it as effective as possible to keep ICE off these county properties. So that's what's happening here, and that's who Jen is there.
Yeah, and it's gonna be very important just how effective these ordinances are, because at some point, especially with this being an election year, if the voters think that the Democrats just haven't been able to stop ICE, and that could definitely affect the turnout for the Democrats.
Yeah.
So
Surely.
both whatever gets passed nationally, obviously we don't control the state, so nothing's going to get passed by the state. I mean, maybe Hobbs' office could issue some sort of executive order, but
well, I'll tell you where the rubber really hits the road in terms of law enforcement here in Arizona is our Attorney General Chris Mays, who's been a complete fucking badass warrior, and our county attorneys, Laura Conover being our Pima County attorney, who's going to be the one in charge of drafting this ordinance and prosecuting any crimes potentially that might be committed by CPV or ICE. That's a big lift. I mean, it's a big step. I'd say we have some tools in our toolbox. One is that we absolutely do have sovereign jurisdiction over police matters in the states. I mean, it's been one of the traditionally strongest areas of state control, is that it is considered inherent as part of the sovereignty of the states in our federal system that police function occurs in the states. And so DPS and the county sheriffs are all 100% able and effective to investigate, and our county attorney and our attorney general to prosecute any crimes that happen here in Arizona, irregardless of who commits them, except maybe, I guess, some people who have immunity, actual immunity, like, foreign diplomats, basically. So we have some strong tools to work with. And in terms of non-cooperation by our state and county and city police, there is a lot of precedent on this from the Supreme Court, especially around the idea of non-commandeering. Basically, the federal government can't come in and start ordering your people about when they work for the state or the county or the city. They don't own those people. They can't commandeer them. And so this really is a bulwark in our federal system that we need to protect very strongly, is that we have the ability to police our communities. And that is not a federal function. For instance, if you see an ICE officer on the street and he tries to engage any kind of jurisdiction over you, if you're not an immigrant, they have none. You're a citizen. The only way that they have any kind of jurisdiction over you is if they claim that you are interfering with their operations, interfering with a federal operation, which is a federal felony. And that's why they're using this so heavily, is that, somebody will be driving down the road and they'll get in the way of their car, and, these ICE agents will fucking, ram your car and pull you out and try and charge you with interfering with a federal operation. And indeed, there's obviously no mens rea. There's no intent to do that. And even if there was an intent to do that, whether or not that particular actions they were taking, filming them on a video, holding a sign, yelling at them, telling them fuck off, and blowing a whistle, none of that is going to hold up in court as impeding a federal investigation. So this is purely pretextual arrests. And most of the time what happens in these cases is they will drag you off, they'll beat you up, and they'll let you go.
I wonder if it counts towards their arrest quotas that they're all trying to fill so desperately.
No, those are totals for expulsions from the country. So deportations. 3,000 a day is what Steve Miller wants, which adds up to a fuck up a lot of people. And you got to make a lot of a mess in order to reach those quotas. So yeah, that quota is an issue. But that's one of the reasons why they're being so goddamn reckless in their operations. They get themselves in these situations where, they go out to a public place and they harass a bunch of people, and people gather and they get pissed off and they whistle at them and they tell you, fuck you. And, shit just gets out of control. They start a fucking riot. And then they call the local police to pull their tails out of the fire. One of the things that would help curtail that is if they knew local police ain't coming to pull your tails out of the fire. You put your tails in the fire, you deal with it. We ain't helping.
There's one footage that I saw from, I believe it was Minnesota, and it was just somebody walking across the street. They had the walk sign, but then ICE was trying to make a right turn, and the driver and the passenger got out of the car and started firing non-lethal rounds at this pedestrian to get them out of the way.
You've got to be kidding me. That's fucking absurd. This happened here?
No, it was in Minnesota.
Oh, it was a video you saw. Yeah.
And,
This they're testing out their ability to harass the fuck out of people in Minnesota. And there's one very good reason for that. In fact, I'm going to write an article on the blog about that pretty shortly here. I'll give you a little preview here. If you look at the map of the Eighth Circuit, the Eighth Circuit Judicial Circuit here in the United States, you'll see a string of extremely conservative states and Minnesota. Minnesota is the outlier there. And why that's important is the Eighth Circuit is notorious among attorneys for being the most conservative, the most batshit crazy, all Republican appointed appeals court in that circuit. They know that they have a friendly audience in that appeals court in that circuit. And that's important for two reasons. One, the Eighth Circuit, even prior to all this bullshit, well, I guess it was sometime last year, so maybe not all that prior, but they suppressed the ability to obtain a universal injunction from that district. Basically, you can't get that anymore in the Eighth District. That would be like, oh, these ICE agents are shooting CS gas at innocent bystanders and protesters, and they could go to a judge and say, well, fucking stop that. That's not illegal. That's illegal. That's improper. You shouldn't do that. And that would be binding on the entire country. And so they dismembered that. They dismembered for that district in particular. And it's before the Supreme Court now. But in that district, you can't get a universal injunction anymore. And the alternative that they suggested was to be able to certify class actions more easily. So you're part of a class, you have common interest, you can file a federal lawsuit for violating those interests. But at the same time, they made it almost impossible to certify a class. And so the law in the Eighth Circuit really, really favors the Trump position, which is to be able to do whatever the fuck they want. And without the court being able to stop them.
That sounds like a good article, because the districts are like this level of governance that people just are not aware of. Especially now that, especially when they got rid of injunctions. Yeah, that makes it very akin to the fact that in some sense we have different laws depending on where you live.
Not just defend themselves. Yeah, absolutely, and that's why Minnesota is prostrate and on its own in terms of legal process. The Eighth Circuit isn't going to back up anything that the state does, and they've cut off all avenues to relief through the courts against these abuses, and that's why. And of course, Minnesota is the only kind of bluish state in that whole passel of states that's in the Eighth Circuit. And so that's why they chose Minnesota. And it's within, most of it is within a couple hundred miles of the border, which is where the Border Patrol has its strongest authority, yada, yada, yada. But that's why it seems to me a little bit less likely that they'll do the same kind of operations in Arizona that they're doing there. They're doing some of it in Phoenix. They're doing a little bit of it in here in Tucson. But I would be really surprised to see them lean fully into just, completely letting their officers off the leash constitutionally the way they're trying to do in Minnesota, because our Ninth Circuit is not a bunch of Republican appointed crazies.
That is interesting, because from a political standpoint, I'm a big fan of this quote. And I wonder if you know who this quote is. So I'll give you a bit of trivia. But the quote is, if you're explaining, you're losing.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that insight many times, and it's very true. I don't know who the originator of it is, but
it's Reagan.
Oh, really?
Reagan is who I've been told.
Well, there's a reason why they call him the great communicator.
Yeah. And that, like, for a lot of people, they're going to see just this happening in Minnesota, and they may just think it's because it's a liberal state, a blue state, or it's the Dems' fault, and not see it happen elsewhere.
Well, it is because it's a Dem state. It is because it's a Dem state, but it's because it's a Dem state in a very, very conservative circuit.
Right. And so that's the information they're going to be missing out of. Yeah. And so they're going to be thinking like, oh, this bad stuff is happening because of the Democrats in that state, not because the GOP is trying to push their boundaries on power.
Yeah, no, it's because they've they've limited our legal recourse in that district. And, so Minnesota is ripe for the picking. So why wouldn't they do it?
Absolutely. But let's continue on. I think we're getting to a fun part here.
Okay.
Seconded by Supervisor Hines. Discussion?
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Christie.
I'd like to offer a substitute motion.
Oh, boy.
Reads as follows. Pima County purchased the Drexel Road property with $8 million of taxpayer ARPA funds to facilitate federal immigration enforcement by operating a welcoming center for what was then called asylum seekers per the previous administration's policies. Accordingly, I move that Pima County enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the federal government to lease the Drexel Road facility and other Pima County properties to facilitate federal immigration enforcement per the current administration policies in an attempt to recoup the $8 million on behalf of Pima County taxpayers.
Fucking Christie, man, I
Is
tell
there
you.
a second to that?
No, he's
Hearing
not going to
none.
get a second to that.
We'll resume opening it up for discussion.
Fuck off, Christie, in other words.
Supervisor Scott.
Yeah, I want to actually say something about what Christie just said there. Because people might be tempted to take this at face value. And there's no equivalence between what the last administration was doing and the current administration is doing in terms of legality or intent. And he's kind of trying to draw one there, like, oh, we supported the policies of the last administration, we should support the policies of this administration. Well, the last administration actually followed the fucking law, especially the supreme law of the land, on par with the fucking Constitution, which is our treaty obligations to the rest of the world. And that includes asylum seekers. We have duties to them under ratified treaties, which are the functional equivalent of federal law, even above federal law. When there's a conflict between them, it's actually federal law that loses out to a treaty. And so the implication that this administration is just doing normal business is bullshit. They're abrogating our treaties. They're violating the law. They're ignoring the courts. In the last month, January, in the 8th Circuit, the judges themselves took a look and saw how often ICPP, Homeland Security, had violated court orders. Not within Minnesota, but in the 8th Circuit as well, but mostly within the state of Minnesota. 100 times. There's been 100 violations of court orders coming out of Minnesota. 100. Now, I want you to understand the scale of that. That is more violations of court orders than your average cabinet level agency would have in its entire existence in 1 month. So him implying that this is just, it's just a different policy. No, this is illegal behavior. This is unconstitutional behavior. This is behavior against our treaties. So when Christie tries to make this false equivalence, I call bullshit. Bullshit, Christie, bullshit. That's all I have to say.
For me, when I watched this live, I honestly felt sad. I do not know Christie. I know he's the one Republican on the board, but I don't see him suddenly getting a job in the Trump administration. Yet he is nonetheless, I assume he's seen all of the footage from Minnesota. He's seen the deaths, and yet he's still going to bat. He's still just like, that's the crazy part, is it's just such a team sport with this. It's just like, what is the limit for the Republican Party? Like, if something happens to Christie's family, is that when he's going to call out the Trump administration? Or is he willing to see as many people in Pima County die so long as his team continues to win?
Yeah. No, I hate to point this out, but it is the truth. And that's that people like Christie are not afraid of us. They're not afraid of us. They're not concerned about Antifa. They're afraid of their own people. They're afraid of their home team. They're afraid of Trump because if you step out of line when you're somebody like Christie, the first thing that happens is you start getting thousands of death threats. You get people with guns in front of your house. It is the legitimate threat of use of force to harm these people, these very representatives who are claimed to be Republicans in some way now. That is what keeps them in check. If you ask any of them behind closed doors where there's no camera, no recording, they'll tell you they're fucking afraid. They're terrified of what will happen if they cross Trump in any way. If
Well,
they
then
don't keep up the fiction.
I hate to, do two wrongs here, but is the response then to just do the same, but from the left? Like if we, like, I don't know what the limits are for protest against somebody like Christie, but like if we showed up to his house with, armed basically, just to protest outside his place, would that eventually make him scared enough of the left?
No.
Why not?
Because he's not legitimate. Because we don't do that. We don't legitimately, threaten and actually execute on violence that is threatened. That's we're not on the same page as these MAGA wackadoos. They'll actually follow through on that shit.
I guess
mostly against Democrats at this point. There's been lots of instances of that, but they're legitimately afraid of their own team. Legitimately.
Yeah, I guess you can say yes. The left isn't going to engage in violence, so you can call the bluff. But like, it just seems like if that's their motivation, that's what's incentivizing them to still play for the team. Is just they're super afraid. It's just like, how do you bring them back to reality?
You don't. You break the power. I mean, we have to break the fascism. We have to make it collapse under its own contradictions and its own internal conflicts. And that's something else that I'm posting about regularly on Blog for Arizona is that this is an extremely brittle thing that mainly relies on silence for its power. And silence amongst its own team in specific, because it's the Republican-controlled Congress that's really empowering all of this. I mean, all the shit that Trump is doing, with the tariffs and half a dozen policies, it's totally encroaching on Congress's Article I powers. He's just plucking them off as he sees fit, and the Congress isn't going to stop him because it's controlled by people who are cowed by him, by people who are legitimately afraid for their lives and those of their families.
Right. And I mean, I guess it definitely goes to the reason like why somebody like Christie, even though we do have, 4 other Democrats on board, he still needs to be removed from office, because if we can't effectively scare the opposition into changing their behavior, then if we vote them out, then maybe hopefully there will be an internal party struggle where eventually they will realize that they aren't winning, and so that they have to change, and somebody within the party will stand up to people like Trump or the other fascists within their party. But there will be a that just isn't something that I can even see guaranteed happening. If it's purely electoral, then who knows? Maybe fascism will win. Sadly,
I mean, electoral politics is part of it, but part of it is also legitimately just citizens organizing and helping each other. I mean, that's the biggest part of it is that people need to get involved, and people need to realize that what they can do is what they need to do. Not everybody can be on the front line. Every army has 10% that fight and 90% that support. You can be part of that 90%. You don't have to be on the front line risking getting your head beat in by ICE to be effective. But it's going to be the people that save us, not the government, not the Democratic Party. It's the American people with freedom in their hearts and an unwillingness to tolerate a jackboot on their neck that's going to save this country. Nothing else.
All right, let's continue.
To correct something that Supervisor Christie alluded to a couple of minutes ago, the county began taking under the first Trump administration federal funds that we use to shelter and otherwise care for legally processed asylum seekers in the United States. And we did that for a period of 6 years, beginning under the first Trump administration, continuing through the Biden administration. I always supported accepting those funds and making use of them for one simple reason. It was a way of protecting public health and safety, not just the health and safety of legally processed asylum seekers. And they are called that because they are given that status by Customs and Border Patrol at the border, but also to protect the general public health and safety. We were able to prevent street releases of legally processed asylum seekers in Pima County, like you saw in other southwestern cities, including San Antonio, San Diego, El Paso. We were also able to afford assistance and support to our 2 rural neighbors, Cochise and Santa Cruz counties, that had no way of taking care of what they were also experiencing when legally processed asylum seekers were released in their counties. Protecting public health and safety is one of our most solemn and necessary duties as county government. And that is why I am going to vote for this item. Because when we take a look at what has been happening around the country, perhaps especially, as all of us know, in Minneapolis, but that's not the only place, we are dealing with not just ICE officials, but Customs and Border Patrol officials. Let's remember that Mr. Preddy was shot by a Customs and Border Patrol official.
Yep.
Those are folks who are not supposed to be working within the interior of the country. They are Customs and Border Patrol, and yet this administration is sending them into the interior of the country where they are not trained to operate. With regard to ICE, it is documented that they have scaled back their training standards. They have scaled back their hiring standards.
Yep.
They're operating under numeric quotas set up by an advisor to the President of the United States, Stephen Miller, that essentially calls for 3,000 deportations a day.
Yep.
And we know, to go back to something that was said during Call to the Public, these are not the worst of the worst. People are finding that their neighbors, their friends, as Chair Allen just said, are being detained. This isn't what was promised. And beyond all of those things that I just mentioned, we have the tragic fates of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, who died at the hands of their government.
Yep.
And so going back to that solemn and necessary charge of protecting public health and safety that we are obliged to take on as supervisors, I cannot countenance the idea of federal immigration officials operating, staging any of their activities on county property. So I will proudly support this item, and I thank you, Chair Allen, for bringing it forward.
Cool. Yeah, good points. You want to pause that for a second? I want to say a little something about Rex. So that's Rex Scott. He's been on for, I think, this is his third term, I believe. And Rex is a Viking fucking warrior. I don't care what people say about it. You don't have to agree with everything Rex does, but Rex is a good and decent man, an honorable man. And when he says that he's supporting something for a reason, he has a real good, genuine motivation for doing so. I don't always agree with him, but I always can trust him to be honest about the reasons why he's doing it, and I can understand those reasons because he articulates them very well. Rex is a good man and a fucking Viking warrior for Pima County. So yeah, here, Rex. And he, basically repeated a lot of the shit that I spewed earlier.
Yeah, it was a bit surprising watching this live because for the past couple months, Rex has been a bit in the hot seat due to Project Blue and the data center.
Yeah,
and
that's what
just to hear him come out on a side that I agree with, it was refreshing and a reminder that yes, these are all Democrats and they are doing the right thing to protect Pima County.
Yeah.
Supervisor Cano.
Thank you, Madam Chair and colleagues. I want to thank members of the public for coming today because your voice matters, and what you are doing by coming to your local government, pleading for action is not only inspiring, but it's a moment that we need you to stand up, to use your voices, and to ask for protections at the local level. I support this motion because fear is spreading in our community. It is changing how people live, it is changing where people go, and changing whether people seek help. We have seen ICE enforcement operations in front of schools, in front of churches, in churches, near the places where families should feel protected. We have seen people detained on the way to work. We've seen chaos and panic. And we've seen enforcement carry out in ways that are cruel, disruptive, and destabilizing. When mass federal agents show up at public spaces, it doesn't just intimidate the person they came for. It scares everyone watching. It scares the employees who have to respond, the families who came for services. And that fear spreads, and it makes our community less safe. It means victims don't report crimes. People don't go to the hospital. Our kids don't go to school. Pima County is a property owner. We have the legal authority to set rules on county property. We have the authority to protect access to services, to protect our county employees, and the authority to keep public spaces calm and functional. Our buildings are not traps. Our parks are not ambush sites. Our health clinics are not places of fear. And our libraries are not places people should avoid. They are public spaces. They belong to the public and to everyone. This motion says we will use the tools that we have to keep families safe and all of our neighbors protected. We will defend order in our community, and we will not let fear take over the places people rely on to live, learn, heal, and work. I look forward to receiving the county administrator's recommendations on how to maintain order and safety throughout Pima County. Thank you.
Yeah, pause there. I got a few things to say about Andres as well. So this is Andres Cano. He's 33, and he is a total fucking badass, I gotta say. He was House Minority Leader back in 2 sessions ago, I think, 2023. And he was part of Richard Elias's stable. Richard Elias, a former supervisor here in Pima County, he was a staffer for him, and so he had some good tutelage under Elias. And he graduated Arizona State University, so that's one ding against him, I guess. In 2014 with a Master of Public Administration.
Hey now, I graduated.
Went back to school. What's that?
I graduated from ASU.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. I didn't quite realize that, but yeah, you're one of those Sun Devil son of a bitches, aren't you? Anyways, he went back to school after his legislative term. He went back to the Kennedy School and got a master's of public administration. Now he's back. He was appointed to the board, and he's going to run for re-election, and he's going to get reelected. This is a man who's up and coming. Keep your eye on this guy. This guy's going to be fucking governor of the state one day. Andros is a total badass, and he's absolutely right in framing this as a public safety issue. These people that say they're all about law and order, but that they come and they cause disorder and chaos and riots and beat people up and shit. I mean, how blinkered do you have to be to understand that if you're trying to protect public safety by removing criminal aliens, which is not what they're doing, that's what they promised, but it's not what they're doing. They're removing peaceful long-term residents who may have some irregularity in their status. They're removing people who are pillars of their community, who are business owners, who are moms and dads of American children, and leaving their kids without any support. I heard about this case yesterday. Well, just today, actually, up in Phoenix, I think it was, that the ICE came and took away two parents of two young children, literally like under 10 years old. And what they told those children reportedly is, you'll figure it out. You don't need mom and dad. You go figure it out. And left them without support. Didn't contact CPS. Didn't do shit. And that is not keeping order. That is not protecting public safety. That is causing chaos for the purpose of chaos and causing chaos to demonstrate to their jackbooted MAGA followers that they are sticking it to the libs, and very little other purpose. I mean, this right. idea that you're somehow keeping people safe by taking away their gardener, the owner of the grocery down the road, it's fucking absurd. It's obscene.
It's what Rex Scott said. This is all just Stephen Miller's racist power trip. He's the one who's setting these quotas. These quotas cannot be obtained based off of truly criminal, illegal aliens. So they're going after anybody that they can get away with. And they have, throughout this entire second administration, just violated the law plenty of times and not gone through court proceedings, not given people lawyers, and just deported people willy-nilly. So this entire thing is not about safety. It's not about helping out the communities. It's just about Stephen Miller's racist power trip. And somebody like Trump himself, he doesn't care really about any of this. He just cares enough that it makes good TV and that he's able to convince people that he did something. If he could remove just one person from this country and make it seem like he removed 1 million, Trump would probably be for that, but Stephen Miller wouldn't.
Declare victory tomorrow. Yeah, absolutely. And how you know that they're not serious about public safety is, they're going after people with TPS, people with temporary protected status, who are here because they're being persecuted and killed in their own country. They're trying to get rid of the Somalians, the Haitians, the Venezuelans, anybody who came in under TPS. They're going after that status and they're trying to eject them too. They're not a danger to this country. They did that whole all Somalians are scammers kind of tar brush bullshit in Minnesota with the Somalian community. And there's a reason why they're using these kind of tactics, and that's because they're not serious. All they want to do is attack people who are lesser than them. They want to scapegoat these people, and there's a reason for that, and it's called fascism. It's one of the ways fascism works is by identifying the enemy within and going after the enemy within, and that has always happened with fascist movements. I mean, most famously, obviously, the Jews in Nazi Germany, and when people say that immigrants are the new Jews, that's absolutely 100%. They are playing the exact same role in the authoritarian fascist playbook that Jews played for Hitler. And so when people make those Hitler comparisons, it's not, whatever that internet law is that all internet conversations eventually end in Hitler. It's a legitimate historical comparison in terms of tactics.
Mm-hmm.
Supervisor Hines.
Thank you. And thank you again for bringing forward this item. It's really great to see everyone here. It's unfortunate that the circumstances for your presence is where we find ourselves. This has happened various times throughout our history. And our government, especially our federal government, should not be a public health and safety threat. And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing with ICE, with CBP. They do have a legitimate role to play, but things have gone far, far beyond. They're being weaponized. As you've heard from my colleagues, I'm not going to echo everything they've said, but I'm also supportive of this item and will look forward to voting for the ordinance when it comes back before us in its final form. And just remember that the government, your county government, your city government, your state government, and your federal government, all of these governments require the consent of you, the governed. And I would say that the federal government has lost that consent. So keep doing what you're doing. All right.
Yeah, I don't know how Dr. Hines does it, but he manages to be an effective badass, even though he isn't actively practicing doctor. So, kudos to him. I mean, he's probably reduced his rotations and such to accommodate this job, but he genuinely does this because his motivation's in the right place.
Absolutely. And we need more politicians that aren't lawyers. There's too many lawyers in politics. And I know you
I
were
can't
a
agree with that
prosecutor.
because I'm a lawyer. But yeah, I get you.
Yeah,
I think if we had more lawyers, we'd have less bullshit. But who knows? He could be right.
I mean, that's a discussion for a later time. But having a doctor definitely does help this board, I would say. And funnily enough, with me personally, when I got started with politics, I was helping out Victoria Steele's primary campaign for CD6 against Matt Hines. And then I ended up helping him because he won the primary. Unfortunately, he ended up losing the election because it was 2016. Yeah. But
that was his legislative run, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, his congressional run. So yeah, he kind of, I mean, I didn't really interact with him all that much on that campaign. I got swept up into the coordinated campaign pretty quickly because I lived down in Sahuarita at the time. And of course, he was focused more on Tucson. But yeah, he kind of was one of the starts for me in politics.
Yeah, Matt's a great guy. But, it can be sometimes hard for people to relate to him because he's very cerebral. He's smart as fuck. So yeah, he can be difficult to talk to at times because he will, he'll start saying shit that you just like, what are you talking about? I'm not smart enough to understand that.
But unfortunately, he is one of the people who support Project Blue. So we got to call out BS where we see BS. Yeah. But that's not this discussion.
It's been done so purposely is the very intense subject of enforcement. Let's take a scenario where an ICE group is deployed in numerous spots in Pima County, on Pima County property, at parks or a library or a parking lot to enforce their programs of deportation. They are on county property. An ordinance against allowing ICE has been passed by this board. What are we going to do? Send in Tucson Police Department to draw their guns and fight? Is that what we're going to do? Is that what we're asking for?
I am going to pause here because the audience has started clapping. The audience has started.
Yes, let's do that. Yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, but it clearly shows what voters and what people want.
We're pissed.
And it's, a very extreme thing when people of the country want local police to try to arrest and stop federal police. That is not normal.
No, and what's normal is, wanting the police to intervene when somebody's stomping on your face.
Yes, absolutely.
That's perfectly normal. But no, it's not gonna happen. You're not gonna see TPD officers or drawing down and arresting ICE officers. No, the whatever Conover comes up with is going to be much more subtle than that. She's smart as hell too. I have a lot of respect for Conover, and she's gonna do something that she thinks will be effective and actually enforceable in some way. So no, this theory that Christie has of the gunfight at the OK Corral happening here in Tucson, not happening. Red herring.
Right. But for me, again, my concern is that if Democrats come off as too weak on ICE, if we aren't able to slow down, if it just gets worse and Democrats have opportunities, whether nationally or locally, I mean, to a certain extent, yeah, that can motivate hate voting against the Trump administration, but it can also really get people upset with the Democrats as not being effective against stopping Trump. And that can, in theory, depress turnout.
Yeah, no, that's
So,
fine. I welcome that hate because it's going to motivate politicians to get on the right side of history.
I mean, yes, but like, again, it's like, what are they going to do that actually stops? Like, if what Laura comes up with doesn't actually work, is she going to then go to the next thing, which is sending the police in, trying to actually arrest ICE?
No, she's not. She's not stupid. I mean, that whole idea is fucking sophomoric. I mean, if you understand law and you understand, how police work and how interagency interactions work, and interactions between local agencies and federal agencies work, it's just that's not going to happen. It's just dead letter. It's just bullshit. It's not going to happen. That's not what's going to happen. But as to the political point you're making that, are Democrats going to piss people off by not being effective? Yes, absolutely they are, because they will not be as effective as people would hope. And I'll tell you that this is why I say it's not our elected leaders, it's not our party, it's not our government institutions that are going to save us, it's the people. The people getting in the streets and saying enough is fucking enough. This is still at heart, in people's hearts, a democratic country. That's part of our ethos. Our civic religion is being, Democrats, be living in a democratic free society. People are not going to put up with this shit. I have 100% faith in the American people to say enough is enough. And that's what's going to save us. Nothing else.
So I think you're saying two things that are different. You're saying getting out in the street and you're saying enough is enough. Getting out in the street by itself doesn't change anything. The entire country could get out on the streets and then go back in, and that's not going to get ICE to change its behaviors.
No, it's sustained action. Sustained action is what's really effective. Is people going out day after day, week after week on a regular schedule and creating a drumbeat. I mean, we even saw a limited form of general strike in Minnesota. And I think ultimately, in order to shut this shit down, that's what it's going to take nationally is, something akin to the lines of, a national strike or protests so heavy, so hard, and so frequent that, the government simply can't function anymore.
Right. But that's not going to happen without political leaders. That's not going to happen without the Democrat.
There will be political leaders that emerge from that. Some of them might be elected now, but there will be leaders that will emerge as a result of that. Mark my words. The leaders go where they see the energy, and the energy is in the streets. They will go to the streets. The fact that a lot of these politicians are not used to this kind of fluid political situation where they're not working within a context, they're not working within a set of laws, expectations, norms, and so forth, makes them very uncomfortable. Right. I understand that, but that's not where the energy is. That's not where the focus should be. The focus is on the people in the streets. That's what's going to save this country. And the leaders had better get the fuck behind that or get out of the way. And they will.
I mean, I can only hope. That they would get out of the way. But again, what I am worried about is people getting to the street and, again, them not getting out of the way, them being an active roadblock, them saying it's bad to be on the street, or, oh, you guys are doing too much. Right? That's my concern. And that's where the Democrats could potentially fumble, specifically in 26 or in 28. So it's like, if we want to stop it, it seems like the only way is either the politicians waking up and actually enacting policy, aggressive policy, and campaigning on that, or just people voting, right? In which case the protests don't really matter. It's just what happens in November that matters.
Yeah, I have very little doubt that the election is going to go the way it needs to go for this to come to a resolution. It's just a matter of whether or not we'll be allowed. But again, that creates a resistance of its own too. But if you see Democratic politicians out there, trying to slow things down or calm things down or say, nay, we need to do this other way, instead of getting behind the people, fuck those Democrats. Fuck them. Don't support them. Don't elect them. Don't donate to them. Don't do nothing. just fuck them.
My headset disconnected there.
Nah, no worries. I think I froze a little bit too, but okay. Back to the meeting.
Are we asking for the sheriff's department to arm themselves up and go in and fight ICE with guns and all types of violence? This is really
He's just being provocative.
Issue that is being perpetrated by this board without thinking it thoroughly through. And if there is any violence after this ordinance is passed, it'll be on the hands of my colleagues to my left. And if you're asking for some sort of a civil insurrection, a violent one, you're treading on very dangerous territory, and I think you know that.
Yeah, this is a straw man. This is classic example of a straw man. I bring up a concern that is not on anybody else's mind, and I beat on that because I have nothing better to say.
Supervisor,
you're a straw man.
I mean, the thing is, though, is that I do, as I clearly stated, would love to see the police physically try to arrest ICE.
Yeah, it's a tempting desire, and I understand it. You know, like I said, you know, somebody's stopping on your face, you want the police to fucking stop it, not to, you know, say, ooh, well, you know, that's bad. You want them to fucking stop it. You know, that's their job. But yeah, it's unfortunately much more complex than that when you're dealing with another federal agency empowered with certain law enforcement powers. You know,
right, but if we're going back to what I said, if you're explaining you're losing, if there's a lot of footage of people getting their shit beat in, especially if there's any with local police standing around not doing anything, that's going to look bad on the local police. It's going to look bad on the local politicians.
Yeah, and that's why the community here in Tucson has been advising TPD, don't be there. Don't be standing by. If they call, don't answer, because that's what's going to happen. You're going to be standing by, and some asshole's going to be stomping on somebody's face, and you'll be sitting there looking like you fucking condone it. Just don't be there.
Right. Or you know, actually stop ICE.
Yeah. I mean, there might be things that we can do in that regard, but it's not going to be, you know, kinetic on the street. It's going to be in the courtrooms. It's going to be in the halls of power. It's going to be, you know, in administrative courts. It's going to be in, you know, interagency fights, bureaucratic knife fights. It's not going to happen the way that Christie's saying.
Right. Right. In which case, then we need somebody here to be on the bully pulpit, making sure that the community is aware of what's being done to hold people accountable.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that Ms. Grijalva and perhaps Joe Mendoza will be those people.
Thank you. Listen, I've spoken to our law enforcement. I have faith and confidence in our local law enforcement. I spoke. And they are not immigration enforcement agents. They know that. I was in the legislature when Senate Bill 1070 was passed forever ago, 2010, I think it was. That was a terrible law that attempted to weaponize and force local police departments and sheriff's departments to become effectively immigration enforcement officers and just pull anyone over that kind of might suspect, right? So this is something that we've been through before. And I have every confidence in our local, in the sheriff's department, in our deputies, in TPD, and all of our other jurisdictional law enforcement agents they are here to de-escalate these kinds of situations. And that's what they've done. They literally had to rescue ICE, right, from Taco Hero because they got themselves into a walled parking lot, and they had to literally call Tucson Police Department to help de-escalate to get them extracted, right? So it's our local law enforcement is there to protect us and to make sure that violence is something that does not happen.
Supervisor Scott.
Chair Allen, it's certainly correct that nobody has the right or ability to impede a federal operation, but we have the right, the ability, and the duty to safeguard county property. And that is all that this item is calling for. That's all that the ordinance that will come before us is calling for. Local governments around the country have taken this kind of action. This is nothing novel or new, but it is something that is abundantly necessary because of what we're seeing coming out of the federal government. And I've been proud to hear our Attorney General and our county attorney say more than once, that if you violate local or state law in Arizona or Pima County, they will hold you to account, and that will include this ordinance.
Yeah.
Do you want to skip ahead to the next agenda item?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
So this motion is worded that the administration can come to us with all of that investigation and recommendations, but I do think that we need to tread carefully on this particular proposal because I don't know what our legal authority is at the county level. And so thank you, Chair Allen, for bringing this forward, and I look forward to the recommendations that we receive from the administration.
Supervisor Hines.
Thank you, and I also appreciate this this item and the motion. It's interesting because 4 or 5 years ago, when a couple of us were first brought onto this board, we were in a pandemic, and I remember we voted for masking requirements, right? So it's here we are with masks again. I never thought we would be discussing
irony of ironies.
Some of the groups that were most vocally opposed actually sometimes were members of law enforcement, nation, and other things. So it's sort of come full circle. I believe, though, to the point expressed, which is valid for sure by my colleague from District 5, the Arizona revised statutes do confer upon counties a significant authority to address public health threats. Illegal or questionably illegal seizing of people, and of course, in certain situations, harming these people. Sometimes they've been killed. The amount of anxiety that is creating among the members of our community, that in this area, in this tremendously welcoming community that I came to 22 years ago, because I felt that energy. I do believe that this represents a significant public health threat, and that we could possibly frame an ordinance in such a way, relying on that public health authority to eliminate that public health threat by requiring full transparency and no masking of law enforcement agencies, with the exception for legitimate need for a health issue. If someone is sick or whatever, that's different. But I think that that's something that we can explore, and I hope that the county attorney and staff will do that.
Thank you.
Chair Allen.
Supervisor Scott.
Thank you. I very much appreciate the comments from Supervisor Cano, because we are getting into an area that none of us know well at all. None of us have served in law enforcement, and I think it's important that we're consulting with especially our local law enforcement agencies as to the scope of this ordinance. This is an issue that is going to be taken up by the legislature as well. I heard on the news just last night that Representative Sandoval has introduced legislation before the Arizona House that would accomplish statewide what we're talking about today. So I think we need to pursue this carefully and judiciously, with especially consultation with our local law enforcement authorities. But I also want to acknowledge and honor what Supervisor Christie alluded to in his motion, his substitute motion, because doxing is happening.
It seems we missed Christie's other motion for that one. But oh well, we can continue on.
I really don't give a shit. Christie's full of shit.
Painting with too broad a brush. Nobody, because of their public role, deserves to have people showing up at their home, threatening their families, endangering their children. We're talking about a failure of leadership.
The red herring of doxing being used to actually threaten the physical safety of these officers. Bullshit.
Agencies. We're not talking about the actions of rank and file people, some of whom have devoted their careers to law enforcement, many of whom are our constituents. So I acknowledge and honor Supervisor Christie's concern about doxing, and I would ask that all of us keep our tactics and our intentions in mind when we are responding to what is a failure of leadership from the Trump administration, not a failure of the actions of rank and file officers. Thank you, Chair Allen.
Madam Chair.
Yeah. I think I'll change Rex's nickname to Prudent Viking. My Prudent Viking. He's always so careful and prudent. I appreciate that.
Oh, prudent. I thought you were saying Putin, and I was like, what?
Putin Viking? What? No, prudent. Prudent Viking. He's a warrior, but when he stabs you, he'll make sure it obeys all the regulations.
Leave it to the lawyer to know all the words in the English language.
One of the elements of my colleagues, thank you, Supervisor Scott, for your words, but one broader sense that I think needs to be addressed, and I'm talking to the law enforcement community, particularly the law enforcement community unions. Tucson Police Officers Association, Arizona Probation Officers Association, Pima County Probation Officers Association, Sheriff's Labor Association of Pima County, Tucson Police Captains, Lieutenants, and Associates Associations, Pima County Sheriff Commanders Association, and Pima County Sheriff Deputies Association. My colleagues on the left that do not vote, that vote for this item, are the same folks that tell union members and law enforcement union members that we are here with you. We have your backs. We need your support. You can count on us, and we will be there to fight for you. By voting for this amendment, what they're really doing is making your lives and your family's lives in danger because of doxing. What needs to be clear here is we've seen it in other venues where everything is the same as far as unions.
That's about the crudest and stupidest attempt at making a wedge issue I've ever heard.
I urge my law enforcement.
You're absolutely right, because it's one thing to be talking about this for ICE because of it being a federal one and all the stuff that's going on, but for local law enforcement,
that's not an issue.
Definitely. Yeah, if a cop pulls me over, I want their badge. I don't, and they shouldn't be wearing a mask.
That's why they don't wear a mask. That's why they wear a badge and a number, and they're required to give it to you upon demand, because, we don't want people wielding terrible public authority. I mean, terrible. I mean, these people are empowered to kill someone, to kill them without any due process, without, any kind of, oversight, really, except after the fact. They're empowered to kill people. So we want those people to be the most accountable, and police unions and police themselves understand and respect that. I just can't even. I can't even with Christie. It's ridiculous.
It's kind of surreal, because when I was a kid, I lived in Illinois, but I grew up during the DARE program, if you recall the DARE program. Mm-hmm. And so all the police officers that were involved, they had their own cards for the DARE. And it was like a business card. But I remember just trying to collect them because I liked collecting cards. So it was I just had a bunch of police names and their number and their picture. Yeah. And now it's oh, we got to protect our police and their identity. It's just so surreal from how things were just 20 years ago.
Yeah, no, Christie may not be aware of what I talked about earlier with, the agents of DPS being elevated to the kind of secret, protected status of a CIA officer. And that's how they're able to get away with this. So he's probably not aware of that abuse of administrative process in order to try and protect these fail sons from exposure to, their history, what they've done in the past. And that's what they're afraid of. It's not public fucking violence against officers. That's bullshit. They're worried about reputational risk, not physical risk.
Union brothers and sisters, and the people who defend us and keep our streets safe, who have relied on Democrat support for decades, to remember who voted for what in this session, and that the vast majority of my colleagues are not your friends. And that when it comes to re-election, which is around the corner, and my colleagues call you up to knock on doors, to walk neighborhoods, to write checks, to make phone.
Just for the audience, Pima County Board is not up for re-election until 2028. I don't believe they do a staggered election, so I don't think any seats are up for election in 26.
They're not.
Phone calls, that you turn them down, and not only turn them down, but point out to them that they abandoned you by allowing doxing and to threaten their lives and to make their jobs that much more dangerous and that much more difficult. Turn down their requests and vote for whoever's running against them. Thank you.
Well, that's a very nice social media piece for Christie
I've
there.
worked for years with law enforcement agencies
well
on
done, sir.
issues and have learned the.
I mean, isn't that kind of calling the kettle black? We're just giving him free social media real estate.
Yeah, somewhat, but yeah, we are calling him a fucking dipshit for doing it. So, I mean, there's that balancing. At least there's some real-time commentary on his bullshit here.
Yeah, I mean, we've clearly identified that he's scared shitless of his little death cult that he's in.
Yeah, exactly.
The strong commitment and the essentialness of having trust, transparency, accountability between law enforcement and the community. And my experience has been that our sheriff's department, the city police department, and other law enforcement agencies in Southern Arizona that are committed to our communities, that know our communities, that trust, transparency, accountability, and integrity are things that they strive for every single day. This item is getting at behaviors that are far outside of that. And so with that, I want to pick back up a similar amendment to the previous item, knowing again that an ordinance requires.
Let's just move along and not get too far into the weeds of the agenda items and their amendments.
Yeah.
Because there's still one more.
I do, of course, find Christie's motions to be amusing and illustrative of the kind of propaganda, truth twisting, and playing to the room that Republicans are famous for. So there's some entertaining aspects to that.
Want this for our community, that this is not warehousing our loved ones, our neighbors, our patients, our students, our employees is not the solution. There is much, I think, that we can do to try to stop this detention center. Communities across the United States right now who are fighting this push from the administration to warehouse more and more people to the profit of private companies have been standing up and defeating them. I think that is exactly what.
I think this is something that needs to be said louder, honestly.
Yeah.
And that is that there is profit to be made off of these.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
It's just, I mean,
Huge profits.
right. It's just really awful to think about. And it's just that in the 21st century, you can effectively make money kind of in a similar vein to the slave traders of the Atlantic slave trade, just shipping people back and forth.
That's not fair. Yeah, and profiting off misery, profiting off degradation, profiting off exploitation. That's sort of the worst aspects of capitalism.
Right. And but it's also like, I'm thinking now, like, wow, this is awful. It needs to be said more. But like, I'm also thinking, would talking about that more actually convince anybody? Because it's obviously not going to convince like the MAGA guy who spoke up during the public call. Like, there's no amount of awfulness that's going to convince him to vote against it. Is it going to motivate moderates? Maybe, maybe not. It's just like, there's just so much bad stuff, and it's really what I'm struggling with. It's just the fact that the MAGA voting base is so strong despite all that has happened. Yeah, and it's like these type of people exist, and they aren't going to go away. They're going to continue to be a voting base. It's just how organized are they going to be going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that they just all go crawl back under whatever rock they came out from under. And you have to understand that the Trump coalition adds a lot of new voters that wouldn't otherwise be Republican voters or even vote at all. So that's one of the reasons why he's been so successful, is because he's found a target audience that had not been identified as a potential source of political power by either party, really. I mean, obviously more the Republicans than the Democrats, because they've always been flirting with John Birch and so forth. But yeah, it's I'm hoping that they will in fact fade away and stop participating in electoral politics, because they don't see anybody reflecting their views. They don't see anybody to vote for.
I can't see that happening, because the GOP, and there's so many agents within the GOP that know that MAGA bloc is a powerful force.
Yeah.
That there's always going to be somebody trying to fish them out. And even if it's not for political gain, there's always going to be the grifters. There's going to be the Ben Shapiros. There's going to be the Charlie Kirks. There's going to be the Nick Fuentes that are trying to grift them for their own money.
Yeah, but they'll go back to being snake oil salesmen instead of, serious politicians. One hopes, in any case.
Right, but that will keep them active and at least politically aware, and always make it tempting for those who are politically active to try to reach out to this block.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. But I think one of the long-term things that's going to happen, and this is kind of getting off the topic here, but I'm willing to go into it. One of the long-term things that's going to happen with the Republican Party is that there's eventually going to be a showdown between kind of the traditional American Democratic, small d, conservatives who want conservative smaller government and actually mean it, as opposed to the radical right who wants to make government more intrusive, more powerful, in fact, kind of all-powerful, fascist, authoritarian. These people are going to have a reckoning with these people. And Trump is really the only thing that's holding them together, and fear is really the only thing that's keeping those traditional Republicans in the mix, because they realize that they don't have a place to go, really. And if they want any kind of representation of their views, they're going to have to put up with this fascist bullshit. But after Trump, I wonder if that's going to continue to hold true. I think there will be a reckoning between the traditional wing of the Republican Party and kind of this new neo-fascist wing of the Republican Party, and the center can't hold in that coalition.
I don't entirely agree with that view. I do think after, say, Trump dies, that there is going to be issues within the Republican Party and who's going to lead the different voting blocks and get them all working together. But what I think is going to win out is going to be the crony capitalists. I think the crony capitalists who are able to donate to all the political campaigns, they're going to kind of make it so that way, if you're a small government type traditional Republican, you have to be on board with their grift.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not going to get their money.
Yeah, no, that's
the fascists, though, they're going to be on board with that grift so long as they can get the racism, or they can get the misogyny, or they can get whatever else they can get from the capitalists.
The grifters and the crony capitalists are all going to go with the fascist wing, of course, because access to power equals wealth in their grip. But the problem with that is that it's a very temporary situation where Republicans control and have essentially paralyzed our legislative branch to do any kind of oversight. So, like right now in Washington, especially around the Trump family, it's just fucking blatant. The amount of corruption is just staggering, in your face, fuck you, we don't care if you know kind of situation. That can't last. The public won't put up with it, and especially the actual conservative Republican wing of the Republican Party wouldn't put up with that shit. They know that destroys economies. They've seen it. I mean, they know their history. They know that path ends in fucking everybody being poor and impoverished. And even if you are wealthy, you have to be constantly looking over your shoulder for the next guy who's going to take it off you by extra legal means. And so, no, none of those traditional Republicans are going to have anything to do with the grifting fuckers. The grifting fuckers are going to go with the fascists. And it's my contention that ultimately any kind of real political party that could be a long-term force in American politics, and 10 years is not a long time in terms of a national life, is not going to be able to pursue this kind of bullshit long term, because it's not sustainable. Fascist movements eat themselves. The way that they look inwards to find an enemy, once they've found that enemy and eliminated it, then they look more inward and more inward for more.
Right. But what
can victimize?
For that to happen,
they're victimizing themselves.
For that to happen, though, like for them to turn further inward, they would have had to been successful, and they have yet to be successful. Like we're talking about them actually removing all the Hispanics from the country type level of success. And
so what you see with these people when they're removed from power is that they'll attack each other and just disintegrate.
You're much more optimistic than I am. I am nothing but pessimistic when it comes to the future.
I'm deeply familiar with the history of the militia movements and the far right-wing movements in this country. And that is the consistent pattern. If they don't have power to wield state power in order to victimize people who they perceive as other, then they'll happily turn inwards and start victimizing each other, because they have to have an enemy in order for their worldview to cohere.
All right. Well, I mean, who knows what will happen, but I'm glad that you're the optimist here.
History shows that this is exactly what will happen once they're removed from power. If they're removed from power, of course. But again, like I said, that's not going to come from inside the government. It's going to come from the people.
What members of Price and other community organizations are doing, and I think we as the board need to do all that we can to try to stop this sort of warehousing and inhumanity and denigration of our friends and family members. So with that, I will move the item. Seconded by Supervisor Hines. Discussion.
Madam Chair,
Supervisor.
For someone who's been on the board the longest here, I can remember very, very clearly that there was a FEMA center. You could call it a detention center, I guess, but it was designed in an opposite way. It was designed to bring immigrants into this country and then set them on their course to...
It was not a detention center, you fucking moron.
Wherever they might be. And it was a FEMA facility, and it was on Los Reales. And it was there for, I guess, close to a couple of years, and it was very busy. There were hundreds and hundreds of arrivals daily. We were never allowed to go in and see what was going on in that facility. We don't know how many people were kept there or warehoused there.
Supervisor Christie, I'm sorry, that was a shelter, O Casa Alitas, and we knew exactly how many people were there. We knew exactly who they were.
It was not Casa.
He's speaking out of the right-wing fever swamps with John Birch Society bullshit.
It was a FEMA subsidized
FEMA is the enemy.
Hold people and to bring them into the United States. And it was there for a couple of years. Was that a concentration camp? Every time I ask what is going on there, why do we have that facility on county property? And what is taking place there? The consistent and constant answer from Pima County administration was, oh, that's the federal government's project. We have nothing to do with it. We know nothing about it. Well, this Marana ICE Detention Center is a federal government project. And now all of a sudden we have all kinds of interest in it. What happened to the interest of that holding pen on Los Reales that was run by the federal government then? Not a peep out of anybody. And it just goes to show on this particular issue that we have no jurisdiction, no authority.
Just a whataboutism as a whole. And I'm, because I'm just not familiar with Pima County history or political history, Jen Allen is talking about one facility, but it seems like Christie's talking about a different facility. Is he just making shit up, or was there a different facility that you're aware of?
Oh, there was a FEMA facility. So yeah, he has the facts right, but he has like he's making this comparison. It's like, oh, look, there's these two oranges. They're the same thing. Why aren't you treating them the same way? When one is a deliquescing, rotten mass of corruption and bullshit and inhumanity, and the other one is actually consistent with our laws, our traditions, and our international obligations. So yeah, he's just throwing out a red herring. It's a
right
bullshit.
Or no say over a government purchase of a facility for its use. So this is a superfluous, unnecessary action, but you're more than welcome to take it. But it certainly is a lot like many of our resolutions. They don't mean a thing. Thank you.
Much like anything that Christie says, it doesn't mean a thing.
I do want to ask both the county administrator and the deputy county attorney this question. Because I'm going to vote for the resolution because I don't want an ICE detention center in Marana, but that's within the boundaries of another jurisdiction. And so I wanted to ask the county administrator and the deputy county attorney, does Pima County have any regulatory or legal authority that we could bring to bear that would prevent an ICE detention facility from opening in the town of Marana? Any regulatory or legal authority?
That's the question. Sure, that's a very good question. And that's why I call him my prudent Viking.
Yes. My apologies. That's okay, Supervisor. Thank you.
Administrator Lisher.
Chair Allen and Supervisor Scott. Chair Allen and Supervisor Scott, we don't have jurisdiction over the zoning within an incorporated jurisdiction, but I would defer to the county attorney about what we have in terms of making a statement regarding the policies.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lesher.
Chair Allen, Supervisor Scott, there may be some legal authority under public nuisance that we've been looking into. There may be other legal authority, and depending on the result of this vote, we can certainly explore those options.
So thank you, Mr. Brown. And Chair Allen, I would request that if the resolution is passed, that the board hear back from the county attorney's office as to our legal authority. Ms. Lesher has pointed out that because the town of Marana
Let's
has
move ahead and get out of the legal.
The facility on Drexel. We have other facilities. There was a facility on Miracle Mile of where we had.
I just didn't want to waste time getting too far into the weeds.
No, it's fine. I just, that's kind of my jam. So,
of course, the lawyer would say that. Eventually, it's just going to kind of turn into this guy wanting everybody to go into executive session and Jen Allen not realizing that that's what he's hinting at until Rex himself says this is what he wants.
Yeah.
So
I would like to be a fly on the wall in that discussion, but I'll give you a rundown of what was probably said. Is there's a number of authorities that we can use in order to limit the operations there in certain ways that impact public safety, that impact public nuisance, that might affect neighbors, but we don't have any direct authority to like prevent acquisition and use. We can just like they do with abortion clinics.
I do wonder when he breaks like this, who's getting recorded? Is it me or is it him? Oh, you back?
Yeah, I think I popped out for a second. My internet's a little unstable for some reason. What part of that did you catch?
None of it, except for like the very beginning.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, if you were a fly on the wall in that room, Sam would be telling you, look, there's nothing we can do to directly prevent acquisition and use of the facility, but we can make it hard. We can erect some barriers and some walls and some regulations around the situation to make it harder. Much like the Republicans have gone after abortion clinics over the years, making their regulations harder to comply with and more expensive. We could do the same with this ICE facility, but that's essentially the limit of it. I would be happy to be proved wrong about that, and maybe Laura will come up with something more creative. But I expect that that's kind of the thrust of the whole situation.
Well, that's, I think, going to be it for this discussion. Just to be clear, the Board of Supervisors of Pima County did vote on all three of these agenda items for one. So there will be more discussions on that in the future within Pima County. But yeah, this ICE issue is a growing concern across the country, and it is probably going to be a very important issue going into the 2026 election, specifically with how the Democrats respond. If the Democrats are seen as too weak on this could depress some turnout in the sense that people will see Democrats as no better than Republicans.
Most decidedly, yeah. Yeah, I am optimistic that Democratic politicians will see the light. Most of them can be counted on to reliably understand their own self-interest and self-preservation.
Except apparently Chuck Schumer.
Yeah, maybe. But maybe his perpetuation isn't exactly lie among the voters of his district. So we'll see what happens with him, or his state. I mean, he's a senator, so that's the state of New York.
Yeah.
But I think most politicians are rational enough and smart enough to be able to at least see their own self-interest at stake and to understand which way the fucking wind is blowing.
Yeah, and hopefully the calls to abolish ICE will just get louder and louder. I mean, ICE is 20 some years old or something like that?
Yeah, I think DHS and ICE were established in 2003. Okay.
But yeah, any final points that you want to go over in terms of Pima County and these issues?
Not really. I mean, some of these same issues are coming up in the Tucson City Council as well. They're doing some of the similar moves. I don't know if one is modeling the other or the other way around, but certainly these ideas are getting around in democratic circles in amongst governments here. And Mayor Regina Romero has been certainly one of those champions out front, trying to protect communities that she rightly perceives as her own people. She is Latina, and so she has been very, very vocal and pulled no punches when it comes to ICE's operations, especially as it targets Latinos overall. Yeah, so I think there'll be good movement in our local governments. It's the state government that we need to really worry about because Republicans still have control. So my insight is for people who are listening, if you really want to be effective in helping to oppose these kind of overreaches by the federal government, elect a state government that's going to fully use the tools at our disposal in terms of our sovereign powers. Elect Democrats. Put Democrats in charge of the goddamn state house. We have a really quite substantially reasonable path, especially if this is a surge election, to actually taking over the House. And if it's significant enough, if it's strong enough, and we play our cards right, we could also take over the Senate. There's a path to that. And so there's one way to be really, really effective in helping that happen. And that's if you are in a district that is swingy, that has mixed representation or has representations by Republicans that, they have a very thin margin, volunteering for those candidates, for your LD and for those candidates that are running in that district for the state house and the state Senate. Absolutely. Best use of your time possible. Absolutely. If you want to do, maybe less physically and more financially, the place to drop that money is ADLCC, adlcc.org, which is, basically the Arizona caucus comes together and puts together an action plan for a coordinated campaign across all the districts that they're targeting that they think are reasonably within target. And they give a great deal of assistance, including staffing to those LDs, to those LD candidates in order to, make sure that they're running as effective a campaign as they can and giving them all the assistance in media and Oppo research and all the stuff that they need in order.
Right. But in the short term, there's a rapid response network in Arizona, right?
Yeah.
All right, then we can hopefully get some links for them in the description. Other than that,
self-help is, like I said, I keep beating this drum. Self-help and self-organizing and community solidarity is where we're really going to beat this fascist dragon back into its cave.
Right, but that's also easier said than done, and the left is not that great at organizing. I
would say the party isn't, because that's not in their muscle memory anymore, but there are plenty of groups and grassroots, people in the grassroots who are organizing separately from the party that, are very effective. And so look for the leaders, look for the helpers. That's what my mom taught me whenever there's a crisis, look for the helpers. And so go out there and look for the helpers and support what they're doing.